let's take a look at how to make these nuts and bolts. Now, although we don't need to make exactly same, but since we are focusing on learning how to model, so we can use that opportunity to learn more tools. So now take a look at how this nut look like. So this is how it is. It has 6 sides, and then same time, do you see these curves? Now we don't need to go into that detail, but getting in that detail and making it really look something like this, and would teach us a lot of other tools that is a good way to learn them while making something. So now we have a circular hole in the middle, and we have like 6 sides on the side here. So that's what we're going to be starting with. Now to make this, I'm going to start with the cylinder right on here at the shelf, and I'm going to set this to 6 sides. I'm going to go into the input, set the subdivision axis to 6. Alright, along with that, I'm going to also set the subdivision cap. Now caps are these. So I'm going to set this to maybe, let's set it to 2, and we can change accordingly if we need that. Maybe let's do 3. Alright, that's all we need to start with. Now I'm going to get rid of this area, all of this, all of the lower area, and now let's work with just the top part. Okay, I'm gonna pull probably this one a little bit more up so it doesn't intersect with the tire, and there's a lot of history. Let's get rid of that as well. Alright, now to start with a nut here, so I'm gonna get rid of also this area. Why? Because inside hole is pretty much circular, so I'm gonna roughly estimate how much this should be, and so for that one I'm gonna go into edge. So it's selecting the tire right now. So what I need to do is probably going to hide this tire and rim onto the layers. So I can select these two, layer, create layer from selected, and set this to reference. Then it won't get selected. If you want to hide it, then you can completely turn that one off as well. Now it doesn't matter how big this nut I make, because I can always scale it down and make it fit to the wagon. Alright, I'm going to grab this inner side and going to scale this up, because this is where this is a circular part of the nut. Okay, right here, and then let's make this one a little up here. That should be good, right about in the center. Now to make this circular part in the middle here, what I want to do is add more edge loops. I'm going to turn on the wireframe so we can see this wireframe whole time. And now to add an edge loop there, I'm going to go into multi-cut, and this time leave edge flow off, and then go and add one in between at every 50%. Control Shift 50%, and we're going to add this to pretty much all sides. Now I'm going to go select the inner edge loop. Now to make this area perfectly round, there's an option in Edit Mesh, is called Circulize. It's right here. So once you select an edge loop and click on Circulize, it's going to automatically create a circle in there. Now same way, I also want to do circulize this edge as well. Select that edge, Edit Mesh, Circulize. Now we got both of these edges circulized, which is great. Now see, I don't want to do outer circulize because that's where I want the 6 sides to be as it is. Now the next thing I'm going to do is grab the outer edge and the inner edge and extrude them downward, and hit extrude. We can hit it from the shelf button or from here, it does not matter. So I'm going to push this down like right about here, like, because we're going to mirror this after. So I'm going to just do a little bit and then do the rest when we mirror. Okay, so right up to here we got this size. Now looking at the board here, so looking closely, see how we have these shapes, and now let's create this, and we also have this inner ring in here. So these are the two things we can be focusing next. So I'm going to go into vertex mode and going to grab all these points, and we're going to push them down a bit. Grabbing all these, pushing them down, right, something like this. Okay, now they're a little bit more where I want them to be. Okay, that's pretty much it for this area. Now for every other area, now we wanted to hit 3 and see how it looks like. Okay, it looks more like a donut and really smooth at this point. So to make those edge comes out hard, we're gonna need to bevel those edges. Now what edges? Specifically this edge and these corner ones that we wanted to stay as they are. And when you're selecting this, be careful that you don't select any other edge that you don't want. So I'm gonna grab this edge, this edge, this edge, and pretty much that's it. So, and now click on bevel, and now I'm gonna change the friction from 0.2 to 0.1. That will bring those lines pretty close to each other. All right, so now go back into the object mode and hit 3, and now you're gonna see that shape right up there. We see that ring, and we also see this little arches on the side here. Okay, so this is great. Now let's mirror this on the other side. Now if you remember, we used the mirror geometry. That's exactly the same thing we're going to use here as well. Now to use a mirror, I wanted to change this pivot point to the edge of this nut. So I'm going to do that by switching to the front view and get as close as possible. Like changing a pivot would be hold D button, and then I'm going to move this green arrow up to this point right at the border edge, and you can zoom in more to be more specific about where it should go. So hold D and place it right above it. Okay, so now that's it. The pivot point has been changed. Now I wanted to show you that in mirror we have two options: mirror in word mode and mirror in object mode. Now let's see the difference between them. To explain the difference, I'm going to duplicate this here so we can do word and object one by one. So on this one, let's say I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to go into mesh, mirror. Right now I'm going to set this to word mode, and we want it to mirror in Y negative. So Y is selected, negative is selected. Now I'm going to hit apply. Here we go. Now this is how it does on the word mode, and when I select this one, it changes it to object mode, and it does this one. So what is exactly happening here? So the difference is, since this is Maya's default grid line, so when you set the mirror axis position to word, it mirrors like from that axis, like how much distance is here, it puts exactly same distance from that line on the other side. But when you set to the object, then it considers only locally, like it's gonna just take this as a center line right from the right where the pivot point is. Now that's how you can use this option of object or word mode. All right, so now since definitely this word mode is not the one we are looking in here, so I'm gonna get rid of that. Now this part is already done. So if I hit 3 on it, you can check the final like nut here, how it looks like. If you need more width, you can always go into vertexes and pull those out to give this one more, let's say, height. All right, now let's take this and place this on our tire. Now once we're done with the nut, now let's create a bolt as well. Since I wanted to create a bolt of the same size, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to duplicate it, and by duplicate and Control D is duplicate, I'm moving it upward. Now what I need to do here is I need to fill the section out because the top part of the nut does not have holes in them. So how do we fill this hole? So I'm going to go into edge loop, double click on this edge, and then change it to faces, Control F11, and I'm going to get rid of them. But also along with these, I also want to get rid of this inner bevel as well, like maybe up to here is good, and hit delete. For faces we don't need to hold Control, that's only for the edges. Now I'll select this inner edge. Now I can definitely scale them up and pull them all the way here. That's also a good idea. But another way I can also do is go under edit mesh and click on merge to center. That's going to merge all these to their center. Here we go. That's the one way to close it as well. Now another option we have in Maya is also called fill hole. Now we can use that going under mesh fill hole. Now if I use this, you will see it's going to definitely fill hole, but it does not give me the edges there. Now it depends which one you wanted to use. If you need edges, then use the option that we used on the top. Otherwise you can also use something like this. So I'm going to grab this and extrude this area out straight down, and let this area go through it and right here, and that's pretty good. Now in the last one I wanted to bevel, because if I hit 3 it's gonna go into the shape. So let's double these edges by clicking on bevel and probably set to really low friction value and set the segments to a little bit higher. And now see, when I hit 3 and those edges stay. Now this is what happens when you don't have the edges, it creates that star shapes. Okay, so it's not hard to close it, so let's do that. Actually, I'm going to delete this face. I'm going to grab this outer edge like we did with the top portion, go into edge mode, double click, and I'm going to do, this is a shortcut for merge to center that we just used from edit mesh, and down here is merge to center. That's gonna close this all. All right, now if I hit 3, see the rings would be nicer and we got a perfect like nut and bolt. Now to scale this, I'm going to grab it and I'm going to make this one a little bit wider, something like this, so it looks more like a bolt. I'm going to grab these two and I'm going to hit 1 on it. So grabbing these two, mesh combine. Now they are turned into a single object. Now it will be easier for us to place it. Now when you combine two things, the pivot point automatically goes to the center. All right, so I'm going to grab and turn on my wheel vac. Now definitely it's too big for the wheel. So first thing is to rotate it 90 degrees. And then it would be minus 90 since we want this area to be on the outer side. And now from the top view, scale it down to the size. And now let's keep going and push this thing back in. I'm going to go to the right side this time and keep scaling it till you get this one to the right size. So I'm going to turn off this wireframe. So just leave that one on. And something around here is good size. Now let's look at the inside portion and look like that nut that we created is not coming all the way out. So although we have combined it, but we haven't merged it together. There's a difference between merge and combining, which we are going to be looking at a little bit later. So now since we have combined it, so these objects are still separate at the component level. If I go into the faces and double click on any face, you can see I'm able to select this entire like nut by itself. Now once it's selected, I'm going to turn this isolate select off to see the entire setup. Now I can pull that out. So I wanted to pull it out to the point where it's just about touching that rim. That should be good enough. All right, now this one we can increase, like I can grab this and convert into faces. The whole idea is to, I want to pull this one a little bit out, something like that. There you go. So just it looks like it's coming tiny out area. All right, so hit 3. The next thing we need to do is copy this over at least 4 times. So I'm going to grab this one, freeze transformation, delete by type history. And now to duplicate this, I'm going to go to the right side. Now since I want to duplicate around this point, so I will change the pivot point of this at there. I'm going to hold D and push this all the way right in the center up here. Now since the pivot point is here, I can do rotation. Now let's do Control D. Now so far we know how to duplicate. Control D and move it 90 degrees. So let's say this is minus 90. So let's do minus 90. Now another thing to know here, if you do once Control D, whatever value you move it, next time you can hit Shift plus D to repeat duplicate process with the same value added. Like for example, see I did it once, I put that value minus 90. Now next time if I want to duplicate, I don't need to do Control D, it would be Shift D. That way it would automatically put that 90 value to it. You can repeat it forever with the same exact rotation that you put in the first one. Here we go. So now with that, now we have our bolts on the outer side as well as on the inner side. Now since they're placed there, you also wanted to freeze the transformations on them because they have this 90-degree angle on them. So modify freeze transformation. All right, so the next we're going to be looking into how to make a pressure gauge for this tire.